You're supposed to be purple, not blue, silly goose. You're actually supposed to be yellow. That's even worse. How did I get that mixed up, silly goose? Hello everyone, and welcome back to Foster the Meeple, a channel all about board games and board gamey things. I am back again today with another pumped up Kickstarter. And today's pumped up Kickstarter is going to be on Chivalry is Dead, Race for the Crown. Now this is coming to Kickstarter in September. All the links, everything you need to know are going to be in the description below. This game is published by Naughty Jester Games, who very kindly sponsored today's video. Now, as per usual with my previous videos, I am going to give you a little overview of how the game works and really just kind of help you determine whether or not this game is right for you. Before we get started, as per usual, this is a prototype, so anything and everything is subject to change. Alrighty, we're on the same page, perfect. Let's dive right in and learn a little bit more about Chivalry is Dead. And we are back. Now, Chivalry is Dead is a chariot racing game where players can customize their own team and compete against each other for the crown. The objective of the game is to complete 1 or 2 laps around the racetrack. The first team to do this wins the game and becomes the ruler of the kingdom. Okay, what does that mean? I'm very glad you asked. Let's take a closer look at how the game plays, shall we? I have set up the overhead camera again. I think this is going to be a new thing. I kind of like being able to do the talking and the showing at the same time. Helps the brain. It's good for the brain. You know what I mean? Now, you can play Chivalry is Dead with 2 to 4 players, with each player controlling a team of around 2 to 3 chariots, which is all going to be dependent on your player count. Now, for the example today, I have set up for a 2-player game. But because the board itself is quite large, I have my team in front of me and I have one of the other players' team to the side to show you some examples, but I'm going to have everybody's chariots out on the board. So before we get into how it plays, I wanted to talk about actually building your team. Now, as I mentioned before, you get to customize your own team. So at the start of the game, each player will choose their teams and then they'll set up their chariots. So you're going to choose a number of character cards depending on the number of chariots that you have. In my example, I have 3. Now, everything, like I mentioned, is customizable and you can build your chariots accordingly, and there are 4 chariot builds in the game. You have offensive, defensive, speed, and resilient. Each of the characters that you start with will start with a default build, but you can change that by replacing the default card with a different build card. So as an example, with my kobold character here, they start off with a default resilient build. However, there is a set of cards here that can allow me to adjust this, and to do that you simply just lay it on top. You are going to want to look at the different types of builds and chariots for your team. I mean, you can, if you want, have every character have a defensive chariot or offensive, but it's good to mix and match. And you can kind of figure out what combinations work for you as you play the game more. You are also going to be adding perks to your chariot, and each chariot has a space for 1 perk. So at the beginning, each of the types of characters that you can be, so there's dwarves, kobolds, goblins, or humans, and they all have a different set of perk cards. So you can select one of those and just place it down at the bottom. Then you will draw from the selection deck to determine starting position. So we have the chariot selection deck right here, which consists of all of the different characters that are participating in the race. So everybody's going to put their character cards in that deck, and you're going to shuffle them around and then draw a card. So the first chariot chosen will start in position 1, the second will start in position 2, and so on and so forth. So let's just kind of set that up as an example in real time. So first up, we are going to have Dwarf 1. That's me. Dwarf 1 is right here. So each character is going to have their own little chariot figure as well as a flag. And the flag is going to tell you, it'll be on their kind of character map, what driver number they are. Okay, so they will start in position 1. Goblin 3, which is also one of mine, will start in position 2. Human 2 is going to start position 3. We have Kobold 2, that's mine. Dwarf 3. Dwarf 3. And then finally we have Kobold 1. Now, the game is going to be played in a series of rounds where each chariot will take a turn. Each round consists of a preparation phase, chariot turn order, chariot turn, which includes charging phase and movement phase. So let's just go over those quickly. Now, once again, this isn't a full how to play. I just want to give you a general idea of how the game works, okay? So I'm not going to go through every single little detail. So if you would like to learn more, you should definitely check out the Kickstarter page, which will have lots more information for you. Let's start with the preparation phase. In this phase, you prepare. That makes sense. Which means that you can adjust your current speed by adjusting your speed turn dial. So now this is probably a good time to show you that everybody has their own little chariots. So my goblin here is going to have her own chariot, where the kobold will have theirs and the dwarf will have his. So you are going to adjust your current speed. So you start off with an animal speed of 20 and a chariot speed of 20, okay? Next, you'll do chariot turn order by doing exactly what we had already done, shuffling up the selection deck, flipping the first card. This is going to tell you turn order. Now, we've done starting positions this way. This is the exact same way that you're going to do turn order. This process, though, is going to be repeated until all chariots have moved. Now, if a chariot is picked and the chariot has no legal movement, you could place the card at the bottom of the pile and pick another card. They'll get their turn eventually, and if by then they still have no legal movement, well, there is going to be a collision, but we'll get to that soon. Here's the meat and potatoes of the game, really. It is the chariot turn. Now, the chariot turn is broken into 2 phases, charging and movement. During the charging phase, the player can announce if they want to charge. Charging allows you to move extra spaces at the cost of 1 control point. So once again, if we are looking at our little chariot, which once again, each character will have one, not only do we have our speed here, we also keep track of control points. Now, control points are going to allow you to do a few different things throughout the game, but if you would like to move extra spaces at the cost of a control point, you would mark that down right here. Then you'll roll one of the d8s and add it to the chariot's driver score and move that many spaces. I'll get to this soon, but what's important to know is that charging doesn't count towards your turn speed on corners. Keep that in mind. And your driver score you'll see here on your character card. So that's the number that you're looking for. Then we'll have the movement phase, and during this phase, a chariot will move a number of spaces equal to its current turn speed. 1 movement point per square, and all available movement must be used during the movement phase, and you'll remember that your movement speed can be found here on your board. You do start off with a max speed of 20, so just keep that in mind. If my movement points were 20, and let's just say Dwarf 1 is going to be going first, they can use that to move 20 spaces. When you are moving, you can change lanes using one movement, but your prior movement will have needed to have been forward unless you start with another chariot directly in front of you. There is also combat in this game. So as you can see, the chariots are separated into a front end and a back end, with the horses in the front and the back end being the chariot. Unless it's otherwise stated, you can attack another chariot with one movement point to move sideways and attack. You just need to be able to line up with the chariot that you want to attack, and keep in mind, you need to be able to move forward once. So let's just say I had been back here. I could use 1, 2 movement. Because my last 2 movements were forward, I can now move to the side. For attacking, you can target the driver, the chariot, or the animals, and you need to declare that before you start. So in this instance, I might say that I am targeting the chariot. Then you're going to roll one of the d8s and add the attack modifier from your character card, and then subtract the defender's value. So I rolled a 7. So now I'm going to add my attack value, which is 1. So I have a total of 8. Now the defense is only 5, so I have outweighed the defense with 8 to 5. Now I will mention that if you happen to roll a 1, it does cause a counterattack, and if you roll an 8, it's going to cause a slam. And a slam will force a defending chariot to switch lanes. If you attack the driver, you're going to subtract the damage from their health. Once again, back to our little boards here, we do have driver health, which you can keep track of right here. If you attack the chariot, you'll apply the damage to the wheel on the side of the attack, okay? So here I'm attacking their left side. So we have on our boards right wheel, left wheel. If one of the wheels ever drops to 7 or below, which is noted here in red, you'll need to do a flip check, which I'll talk about in a little bit. If you are attacking the animals, you will reduce the animal health and max speed, which will affect speed in future turns. I just talked about flip check, but just so you know further, a flip check needs to be done if your wheel drops below 7. Your flip check value is your wheel health plus your driver modifier. So wheel health, let's just say the left wheel was a 6, plus your driver modifier, which is here, a 1, so it's a total of 7. So for the check, you are going to roll a d8, and if the result is less than your flip value, you're all good. But if not, your chariot is destroyed. It flipped over, it freaking blew up. Okay, don't you just hate when your chariot does that? Now you can attack multiple chariots during your turn, just not the same one twice. And I did mention at the beginning that you have abilities and perks, and those can only be used once per turn. So here we have our kobold. They have an ability called Oil Trap. This allows them to throw oil into an unoccupied space adjacent to their driver. Any chariot running over a trap uses up 1d8 movement and is unable to change lanes for the turn. Yikes. And they also have a perk. So we'll just keep going with the kobold. They have bees. That's a fun perk. Throw a beehive on a chariot adjacent to your driver. The token is spent, but the bees do not go on the map. Instead, give the bees effect card to the target, and this is going to explain what happens. Okay, so everybody's going to have an ability and then a perk as well. Reminder, you can only be used once per turn. Speaking of turns, I also want to mention handling turns, because that is a big part of this game. At the turn section, so we have a turn section here and we have a turn section here, which you can see listed here are there's some numbers. At the turn sections of the map, you will see a marker speed limit of the turn. Now, anytime a chariot begins to turn or enters a curve during their turn, they have to perform a turn check I just said turn so many times. They have to perform a turn check to make sure they retain control of their chariot. And to do this, you'll subtract the posted speed limit from the chariot's current speed. And the result will be the amount of damage applied to the chariot's outside wheel. Now you can mitigate this by using a control point and rolling a d8 and adding your driver score to reduce the damage by that much. So let's just say that our current speed is 12 and we are coming around the mountain. We're coming around that corner and the marked speed limit here is 12. So let's just say our current speed was 14. So we are going to subtract the speed limit from our current speed, which will be a result of 2 because we are going a little bit too fast. Haha. We are then going to have to take damage that much. So 2 damage to our outside wheel, which is going to be our left wheel. Okay, so we would just mark that 1, 2. So we go from a 12 to a 10. We're still safe because we are not under 7. Now I have mentioned control points a few times, so just to talk about them a little bit more, each chariot starts with 3 or 4 control points. That is outlined on your character card. So my goblin starts, actually all of my characters start with 3. And you keep track of that here on your little board where you keep track of pretty much everything. Now we've already talked about some ways that you can use control points, but they can be used for a few different things like charging, reducing damage on turn checks, and braking. Now you will regain your control points each time you complete a full lap, so don't be afraid to use them if you start to kind of get close to that finish line because you will regain those points again to be used in the next lap. You have probably also noticed on the board that there are different obstacles and traps on the map that you may encounter. There are things like rocks and water, there's different hazards, and they're gonna do not so great things if and when you run into them, so just kind of keep your eye out. You don't want to like crack a wheel or do a splish splash in a big lake, things like that. The first team to end a turn with at least 1 chariot completing 2 laps and surviving wins the game. If multiple chariots are able to do this, the chariot that is the farthest number of squares past the finish line will win. And that is Chivalry is Dead in a nutshell, in a very general nutshell. So just to kind of recap, this is a racing game. You are trying to complete 2 full laps by moving your chariot around 1, the figure 8, and 2, not forgetting to do speed checks when you go around the corner, and of course, trying to damage your opponents to give yourself a better chance at success. You're also trying to avoid obstacles. Not to mention, you also have your perks and your different things on your board that can help you along the way. You're just going to continue on until 2 laps have been completed. As soon as somebody's card is drawn, they will take their turn. Once they are done their turn, the next person will get to go, and then so on and so forth, remembering to do charging if you choose to, and then to do your movement. So the big question here is, who is this game for? This is a game for fans of racing and heavy interaction. Like I mentioned, there is a lot of conflict in this game, and it would be very difficult to run through a play of this without messing around with anyone. So if you enjoy that kind of mean play style, this could be for you. And I will say it's mean in a fun and funny way because it's just the nature of the game. Like, that's how you win. You take out your opponent so you have a better chance at getting one of your chariots to do a full 2 laps. So it's generally not going to be singling one person out, and you're going to be able to get people back pretty easily and pretty quickly. It's very thematic in that way because chariot races were brutal in their competition. You need to think about when to best use your control points, how you can affect other players' races, like which parts you'll attack, trying to eliminate some of those chariots to open up more spaces, and that's a big thing, right? Like, you can reduce somebody's speed if you go for their animals, you can potentially get them to totally flip if you go for their chariot, or you can run somebody's health completely dry by going for their driver. So you have lots of different options for how you attack other players. Now, there is elimination of chariots, as you know, but keep in mind that everyone has multiple chariots, so though it is possible that you get totally eliminated if you lose all three, but you've got some space to work with. It's very similar in that aspect to a game like Thunder Road Vendetta, where you have your 3 cars and people are attacking you, that kind of thing. You do also need to be considerate of your speed, so don't get out of control on those turns. And honestly, like if you're just looking for some silly fun, this could be a game for you. Now that is a little bit more about Chivalry is Dead, Race for the Crown. If you are interested in this game, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I'm going to have links and everything that you need to know in the description below. As per usual, make sure that you watch lots of content, you read reviews, you check out the Kickstarter page to make sure that this game is a good fit for you. But that is everything that I have for you today. Now, if you're interested in buying board games, remember, this one we're going to go to Kickstarter. Other games that are currently out, you can find at your friendly local gaming store. For us, that is the Boardroom Game Cafe. And if you like what you see, please subscribe. I hope to see you again soon. And now I'm going to race away and say goodbye. Goodbye! Crazy hair. Crazy hair. Itchy neck. Laptop in the way. Laptop out of the way. I am recording. Camera's already overheating. That's never good. Shall we? We shall. There you go. Set up a little. Oops, I wouldn't want to attack my own. So let's make it this one. That'd be silly. They have an ability called Fly in the Room, but they have to